swear the chicks is thicker. Reppin' for the team, that's the pinche Houston sippers. She don't want your liquor, she don't want your chipper. She poppin' for a legend, that's a real masa flipper. This is for la raza, this is for la raza. I'm in my trap, casa whipping up the damn masa.
Bienvenidos todos aquí al podcast de Chingo Bling. Welcome back to another episode of the What Did He Say podcast. It's your boy Chingo Bling. We have my lovely wife
Marisol.
Yeah, producer Rob.
That boy Rob in the building.
Tupac Barbie over here.
Hey, now I didn't bring I don't have a matching bandana for this outfit, so I
Pac Barb.
Pac Barb.
It's good to be back, man. I missed home. We have been crisscrossing the country. Shout out to everyone that attended the fights in Lake Tahoe.
Right.
Combate Americas. We witnessed me and my baby sit courtside. You know, we so close we could trip the ref.
Hey,
You know, that's how we roll. Shout out to Combate Americas. We had a great time. We saw some great fights. Shout out to the fighters, man. People getting knocked out, bloody. They're working hard to make weight.
it's so crazy. One of the things that Chingo and I were talking about while we were on courtside, was the fighters prepare, right, for these fights, and just like this, they can lose. Like in seconds. It's over.
It could be over in 11 seconds.
All this preparation, and then it's like, you're done.
It's like,
Bro.
they clipped you.
Did you see that clip, that 11-second clip?
Yes, I saw that
The
one.
Eminari roll. He got him in a leg lock.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with them locks because I've been out of the jiu-jitsu game for a minute.
Yeah.
Was he like twisting his ankle? That
It was
Israeli
It
dude?
was a foot lock, yeah. He rolled into did like a somersault, an Eminari roll into a leg lock, and then.
So that roll has a name?
Yeah.
Eminari.
Yeah.
So like if you're in a street fight, a bar fight, dude just starts rolling towards your ankle.
Oh, just run. Just say fuck it.
You out of
I'm
there.
sorry, bro. Just say sorry and run.
Yeah. Sorry, you know
Isn't
too
it?
much.
Yeah, he's
That's
going to break your leg in half.
Oh no.
Eminari
Kimanara. Roll.
Chimera coffee? What?
So from let's see, we flew into Reno. We got picked up. We drove to Lake Tahoe, which is about an hour away.
Yes.
And then we did what we had to do. We had a good time. We got a little sunburn out there.
Look, the sun
Tahoe?
yeah, I know.
Oh, bro.
Listen, it didn't feel like the
was
sun
sunny.
was sun. I mean, it was
It's August.
sunny.
Yeah, but it's August.
No,
the water
it's
was
August.
cold.
Yeah, water was freezing. There was people swimming
was
in it. Like
sunny.
it was like nothing. It was sunny, but it wasn't sunny to the point where you're like, oh, I should probably go get some sunscreen because I'm going to get a sunburn, you
Yeah.
know?
It's sunny, but you weren't like sweating. Just after a while, I started noticing like, my head feels a little hot. Like maybe I'm dehydrated. Then I'm like, my skin feels a little. Oh shit! I think we're getting a little bit too much sun. We didn't put nothing on. You know, we're Mexican.
Yeah, I never put anything on.
Yeah, and it's, then he was like, are you about ready to go? I'll fell asleep. I
She
was
didn't
like,
have. You didn't have shades, or did you? I was like, baby, your forehead good? Because her forehead
did
was the
have-
highest point. Like she had no hat, no coverage, no umbrella.
and it's funny because he said that, right? I had no hat, no nothing. I
Like
did
you-
have shades, but, when we
I
got-
fell asleep too in my little chair.
We talking poolside or what?
No.
No, it's like a lake.
Well, let me-
It's the
okay.
lake,
Well,
Lake
yeah,
Tahoe.
obviously.
Well, let me explain
I
this.
didn't think of that.
To anyone who's never been out there, because that was my first time. I've been to Reno, but I'd never seen Lake Tahoe. So Lake Tahoe is this huge fucking lake right between. It sits right in the middle of Nevada and California. So the state line runs through it, and it's like a vacation spot. People go skiing and snowboarding in the winter. I guess I don't know if they do spring break there too for skiing and stuff.
I went. That's when I got to go with spring break.
But there's a whole bunch of casinos and resorts and like vacation homes and like little hotels. It's like a mix between like Schlitterbahn, fucking Park City. It's just like a quaint.
Yeah, Park City. It looked like Park City.
Yeah, it has like that Northern California, that whole area has like those big beautiful trees and the scenery's great, but this huge lake with a beach in the middle of, like, we're not on the coast. It just threw me off. I'm like, whoa, this is dope, because you just see mountains over here, forest, and then water, and then like beach. So that was cool. And then we had to get up hella early because we had to catch a flight to Monterrey.
No, not hella early. Tell
Super
them
fucking
how early it was.
So after the fights, we even had like a drink.
So let me
at the
guess,
fight.
because those fights usually end at like midnight, 1 in the
No,
morning.
actually, since they started pretty early, they were done by like 10:30.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
that's
probably like
really early.
close to
10:30, 11.
So by the time you pack up, get in bed, now it's like midnight, but we had to wake up at
3:30 in the
3:30 in the fucking morning. This is the story of my life, like back to fucking back.
What's funny is that two weeks ago, dead, no sleep. Last week, super energized. This trip, no sleep again, and I have to get back on schedule.
You know what's funny is that I watched I never watch them, but I listen to them on the podcast app. But I actually watched the video of us when we did go to bed super early.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, oh my god! Like
Even right now, hear the energy.
Yeah,
we
for
should
real.
probably go to bed at that time
Yeah.
all the time because that episode was pretty hype.
Yeah.
And my lovely wife gave me a nice gift for my birthday. Give me a kiss, baby.
Oh.
What I did?
Ooh. Thumbnail. Thumbnail.
Which?
Okay.
Oh well, I gave him several gifts. That's why I don't know.
Okay, a
Which
sleep monitor.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so
Sleep monitor.
Showed
I'm
me
gonna put
yesterday.
a pin in that. I'm gonna go back to this 3:30 a.m.
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
So I'll go to the sleep monitor later. It's in my notes. So we have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. The driver that Combate got us, they picked us up from the casino hotel, 3:30. Now we're having to drive from Tahoe to Reno, catch a flight, get to Monterrey. Land, get picked up by the comedians out there, Quique, Miranda, and Salvador, Chava Chiles. And they scooped us up, took us straight to the hotel because we had a show to go do right after. So we get to the hotel, hurry up, get dressed. Again, you've been traveling. You just got from fucking Reno. Order room service because that was the quickest, most convenient thing. It's crazy. They had a Chili's downstairs in the hotel. This is Monterrey, Mexico.
Oh,
So it's
what?
very American. It's northern Mexico. It's a huge city. It's second largest city, third after DF and Guadalajara.
Ohio.
They're closing Chili's here, around here.
Oh, they are? I didn't
there's
have
They
like
that.
going
two
to
in
Mexico.
Sugarland that are like closed.
Interesting.
Yeah, maybe they need to define their lane because they got TGI Fridays and too many motherfuckers.
Yeah, really
in-
close to each other too.
Just too many people in their lane. But anyway, so we went and did the show in Monterrey at a beer garden where they sell craft beer. Which is interesting because Mexico, just like the U.S., has been dominated by the major beer people. So show went decent. I did 15 minutes in Spanish, and I noticed that like these couple tables over here, I was like, they just looked like they weren't getting it, and I'm like, oh man, maybe my
They
Spanish.
weren't really laughing at all. Like it was chuckles here and there.
Yeah, and I was like, man, maybe my Spanish sucks. I get off stage, and then all that whole side, they're like, what's up, bro? When you gonna do a show in English? And I'm like, hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿De dónde
He's
son?
still
We
trying
from
to
Dallas. And I'm like, sí, pero el show en español, ¿cómo nah, man, when you gonna do an English show? Like, they're like, we got deported. And I'm like, que la chingada. Like, I came over here to do Spanish comedy, and then I get nothing but Chicano deportado
That's funny.
that shows up.
Like the first 3 tables in the very front were all people who had been deported or moved there because their other half was deported.
different
so,
reasons.
Yeah, different.
So there were some people that were from Chicago.
When
What's
you
up?
say we're deported, what is it like?
Like you, imagine you or me or Marisol.
Mhm.
Let's just pretend that we just happen to have been brought over as children. So we grew up over here and we're American.
Okay.
So it's like I'm talking to you.
Mhm,
Where you from, man? I'm from Houston,
Yeah, right.
but I live in Monterrey now.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting dynamic when you look at the market. Not only is it a huge city with a lot of American influence, because you have like HEBs and things like that. It's still Mexico, so culturally it's still Mexico, but it's very like modern, and you're getting all this like fast food and
You were
like
saying saw a bunch of Costco's out there. Like, I don't-
Costco's out
here.
the fucking wazoo. I don't even see them as much over here.
Mm-mm.
They have everything over Walmart, El Walmart, and so anyway, that was a cool experience. And then so I'm like, oh, okay, so there's a lot of Chicanos that work at telemarketing and
they're call centers.
yeah, call
Oh,
centers.
that makes
They
sense.
handle. One dude was like, man, we handle like the child support. A bunch of like U.S. services, and I don't know if it's like governmental, just all kinds of big shit. I guess it's jobs that are going down there. They're
Mhm.
The
cheaper.
outsourcing.
Yeah, they're just cheaper. A lot of auto industry, as you hear all the time, especially during these political debates, it's like, all the auto industry is no longer in Detroit and Ohio. They're
Right.
shutting down plants in Ohio, shutting down plants in Michigan. Yeah, they over there. And I also heard my buddy Jesus Trejo, who plugged us in with the folks out there. He had already gave us a heads up. He's like, dude, when you go to Saltillo, there's all these like agencias, like dealerships. There's auto manufacturing down there, and it's a lot of people that came from Michigan. So it's like, oh, the jobs are going to Mexico. Cool, we're going to Mexico.
Dude, so much of it, like parts, not just like big parts or cars themselves or manufacturing, but all the little things are manufactured in Mexico.
Well, the comedian who organized these 2 shows, his day job is he's a salesman, and it has something to do with the auto industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the next day,
Is he or his dad?
pues, his dad. Sorry, I'm about to en español. Su papá.
Su papá.
His dad for sure works in the auto industry, and Salvador, the comedian, I know he's a salesman, but he might have moved around, or I don't know. But anyway, they have everything down there: refineries, petroleum. It's just a whole bunch of shit. So next day we get picked up from Monterrey. They take us to Saltillo. We get some tacos at Los Pioneros, and I have family in Saltillo, so my dad had already reached out. They were going to go to the show that night. They made me nervous in the evening.
Because you hadn't seen him in a long time, right?
That's not why I was nervous. I think they were just kind of like gave me, I had a judgy vibe about the whole Spanish thing. But I knew what I was getting into. I knew how much preparation was going to be required to do this convincingly. So anyway, Saltillo, we end up going to do the show. It was at a what would you call
beer
that?
garden
It was
too, baby.
like a variety multi-purpose beer
so
garden
the
bar.
first place we went to in Monterrey was actually the same way. It's called Metapatio.
Mm-hmm.
And so funny because, anytime you go in somewhere, because we're business people, the first thing you think of is like
Peep game.
Yeah, exactly. So as we walk in, I just couldn't understand what their vibe really was. And what Pete kind of assumed is every, I guess, what is it? Every, beer had their own bar.
Yeah, it reminded me kind of like an Axelrad in Houston in a way. So as soon as you walk in to the right, it's like a hamburger stand, like hamburguesas, and then like further up to the left, it's like mixed drinks or something. Then they have like pizza, and then you go to the back, and then it's like a little beer garden with tables where they do events and stuff. Like they had like DJs threw a party right after us. They do all kinds of shit. But over there, you had like different little bars, and they were all craft beers. It's all
so
like the
every
local.
craft beer. So it would have been like Eighth Wonder,
Carbach or whoever,
like
St.
every,
Arnold's.
So it was everyone had their own bar. I was so confused about that. I didn't understand why.
Oh, they had their own bar.
Literally like a stand. You
it's
go
like
order that beer.
It's like you went to Hay Merchant and every one of those beers had their own little plot to go get
Yeah, I've
it.
never been to Hay Merchant, but I can imagine, like, say we're here kicking it, right? And it's like, oh, I'm going to try some St. Arnold's now. And then you'd walk over there, and they'd give you St. Arnold's, or you'd go over there and get Eighth Wonder.
Wow, that's cool.
Or whatever.
I thought that was kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
I guess maybe because when you go here to a beer garden, you just kind of go up and you're like, I want that
Yeah, they
one.
have all these on draft or whatever.
So I guess that was kind of weird to me. I think that the space could have been used differently instead of all these.
But if that person really, like, if you go to Best Buy and you get a Sony camera and the Sony rep's talking about the Sony camera, if that beer rep was telling you about that beer, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
We didn't get it, so I don't
know.
know.
Well, we didn't see it in action.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There weren't really bartenders at all those spots, so we didn't really see it in action.
But the concept was cool, and let me tell you something. So afterwards, the DJ was playing some pretty crunk music. Like, it was pretty cool. People were like dancing, like legit dancing, not like just sitting around drinking. They were like really getting down. Yeah,
culturally out there, people are lively and they're about they're about living life, having fun. Over here, como dice Luisa, bien desabridos. Like everyone's just like so in their own little head or judgy and stuff.
1000%.
Yeah. So the show in Saltillo. All of a sudden, I'm up there, and it's like the cat just cut my tongue. I just couldn't even think straight.
Chingo Bling.
Yeah, Mr. Talker won't shut the fuck up. I talk for a living. So yeah, that's what happens, man. Sometimes when you're Chicano and your Spanish is decent over here. Espérate. This is my excuse. All right, I got a whole bunch of excuses. Sometimes what happens is if you get in your head and you start thinking like, oh no, I'm in the motherland and this is their first language, like this is their culture, and then all of a sudden you get that insecurity of like, oh no, my Spanish sucks, and then you just start like forgetting words, and I felt like I was cramming, like trying to make corrections from the night before, like you say it like this, not like that, say it like this, not like that. But long story short, I know the amount of work that's going to be required of me in order to like conquistar a Mexico. Like, it's not gonna be overnight, especially not in stand-up. Nothing in stand-up is just easy. You don't just go up there. It's like, oh, my Spanish is an A1, and I've done this twice. And I don't expect it to be like, you're not gonna be Dave Chappelle by doing it 2 times.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
So for
to say.
starters, again, for those who don't know, Chingo's super hard on himself. Okay, so something could have been done amazing, but he's still gonna find something, which is fine. I think all of us, in somewhere or another, are
They're
worse.
like, you got a standing ovation. Yeah, but I had a booger in my nose.
Yeah. So there's always something, right? So Saturday night in Monterrey, he did great, right? So for me, it was like, oh.
Yeah, I was loose. I was moving around.
Like, okay, so it looks like, okay, it's rolling, it's going. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, there's a few obviously things, because again, it's only his second time.
And it's cultural things like, oh, I don't get it. Why is that funny? Or like, what does that mean? Or
Yeah, so I got that. But Sunday night, it was a totally different person from what I saw Saturday, and all I thought to myself was like, all right, he hasn't seen his family in about 20 years. I really wish they wouldn't have been there. I wish they would have met up afterwards. Does that make sense?
For sure.
Because I just felt like it hurt his practice because he was there to try to like get that practice. And although
it's good practice because
he said it was no excuse, but
it's good practice because now you know what it's like to bomb. Think about it. 2 things could have happened. You go down there in Mexico, and by some miracle, like, oh my God, you do great, and they get everything, they understand everything, and it's so funny. Or B, you don't do so great, but you had the courage to go up, get out there, peep the scene. Now you know where you're at. It's like getting on a treadmill or some kind of exercise machine and being like, oh, I thought I could lift 50 pounds. I'm at 10 pounds. And it's like, but when I come back, I'm going to be at 20 pounds. And that's my motivation. It's like, okay, you're going to see the growth. You're going to see, like, when I come back, they're going to be like, bro, this motherfucker, man, he got new material.
Does he need work? Of course, right? Because it's almost like he's starting over in a totally different like genre, right?
Lane.
Back to zero.
But he didn't do as bad as he's making it sound. But again, he's his own worst critic.
And I did the Chapo joke for the first time ever in Spanish.
Yeah. So to be honest with you,
I was scared to do it, but they're like, yeah, do it.
I love the fact that and I kept reminding him the entire time we were out there. I'm like, I want you to remember that you're jumping into something without, most people would probably be afraid, like, fuck that, I'm not doing this, like, number one, yes, Spanish was my first language, but it's not like I use it unless I'm speaking to my parents, family members who don't speak English. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I feel overall, I think he did fine. There's some adjustments that need to be made, just like there was adjustments that had to be made when he was starting in English.
You always adjust, edit.
So it doesn't matter, but I honestly feel, because I've sit back at every show, I know for a fact this is how he started in English, and I have zero doubt that he's going to end up dominating as long as this genre as well. As
long as you set the goal and you're realistic in terms of a game plan and what kind of work is going to be required. And we were talking about this, I think, last night. It's like she and I have I'll put this word. I'm not going to call you delusional, right? I have the right amount of delusion.
I love that word.
I have the right amount of audacity and delusion where it's like, who in their right fucking mind gets on a plane, goes to Mexico, and says, I'm going to fucking do stand-up in Spanish?
I call those delusional aspirations.
Well, shit, that's the word I'm going to use, because that's what I got.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept reminding. And I told him, I said, if that's not a badass, I don't know what is.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you're doing something. Shit, you've never...
Courageous. I'll give myself that.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's one thing doing Spanish, I feel, on the U.S. side versus doing Spanish in the motherland.
International.
It's not...
Is there any part of it that's kind of comforting that you are still kind of playing to your crowd? It's just from a different angle.
Well,
because you didn't go over, to the, Australia or something, or the United Kingdom.
But that's a good question, because I'll put it to you like this. If I did go to Australia or the United Kingdom, it'd be in English. and their perspective might be like, oh, this is Tex-Mex comedy from, U.S. It's from across the pond, and it's Tex-Mex, and we have a vague understanding of what fajitas are, and these guys Tex-Mex. You know what I'm saying? And, the plight of the immigrant in the U.S. given the current administration. I sound like Russell Brand and shit.
I know. I was like,
given the current administration, they might have a different perspective.
Right.
Here's the thing to consider. Ashley brought this up yesterday. Is, the scene in Selena where it's like, we're not really American enough to fit in the American scene because we're always labeled and boxed as, oh, you're Latino,
right.
so you're having a crossover within your own country. With that being said, going back to that Selena quote with Edward James Olmos, it's like we're not Mexican enough for Mexico. And think about how many there have been exceptions, right? Like I would say Jenny Rivera, Selena, maybe like Intocable,
even
Cumbia
Selena
Kings.
kind of had a hard time though because she was very Tejano
and very talented to where she overcame the Tejano, like she conquistó a Mexico. Like despite her Spanish sucked, her talent and her star power is like, oh, we don't care if you have a fucking accent, like the cumbias you make and the songs and you and your energy and your personality, like that makes up for all of that. So what I'm trying to say is this, what some Mexican Americans have managed to do, like, oh, we're going to tour in, like, I can't name any Mexican American comedians that tour Latin America that I could think of. I don't know if George Lopez, Fluffy, Felipe,
Paul Rodriguez.
Yeah, no, I don't think Paul
so.
Rodriguez. No, I think he stayed mainly English-speaking countries, to my knowledge, right?
Yeah,
I'm not an
yeah,
expert.
no.
Regardless, let's just say Intocable, they're from Zapata, Texas, right? Down by Laredo. Cumbia Kings, Corpus Christi, Selena, Jenny Rivera. Her Spanish is great. Her music is very Mexican. So I'm not sure how seamless her transition was. I think Jenny had more to deal with. She's in her brother's shadow and things like that. But what I'm trying to say is this. What I would like the story and the narrative to be down the road is, this is a fucking perfect storm. This is a phenomenon. Like, I want people to, like, people to be like, bro, I heard that he might not be selling out arenas in Mexico City right now, but because they've been hitting Monterrey and Saltillo and, like, northern Mexico, like, they kind of started building a bridge, and that's a bicultural gray area. Like when you have huge communities of deported Chicanos, and you have like this influence from the north, and if you're sharp enough with your observations and your writing, and you know how to like hit the nail on the head with the observations of like cultural differences. For example, Marisol we were getting ready to go to the gym. She was wearing some gym clothes, right? Like yoga pants. Luisa, who's from Cadereyte near Monterrey, she's from Mexico. She's like, and he lets you go to the gym like that? And I'm like, they're just yoga pants, right? And she's like, man, if the baby soiled my clothes and I had to borrow some of your pants, and if I went home in those, me mata. Like, he'll fucking kill me if I come home wearing something like that. And it's just one example of like cultural differences. Machismo. Like, let's say you're a dad, which you are, and you're helping out your lady, like, hey, I'll wash this dish while you make the bottle, or I'll help pack the bag while whatever. That's considered like mandilon. That's like mandilon. Like, oh, you're how would you say that in English?
Like whooped, I guess.
Yeah, like whooped, right? And it's almost like you're less of a man because you have your woman as equal. And that's that whole patriarchy thing that you see in Latin America, which has just been ingrained into the culture. So these are some things that I have in my notes, like little things that I've noticed. For instance, I hit a little bit of weed out there, just 2 times. And first of all, the weed had piojos. I appreciate the weed. It was a nice gift, but it had piojos in it. I had to take the seeds out. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to having to take piojos out my weed. But anyway, over there, it's looked at as what? Drogas. Es droga. Over here, it's like, no, it's medicine. Culturally, people have become very open-minded. Old ladies, sick kids, people with epilepsy. It's good for so many things. Over there, es droga. As they're smoking a third pack or alcohol is no. Alcohol makes alcohol. No, that's not bad. That's what you do because it's 5 o'clock. That's what you do because it's someone's birthday. That's what you do because the sun went down. That's what you do because we're having a good time. That's what you do because I ain't seen you in 20 years.
It's an accepted social lubricant.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
It's not seen as a drug.
Word.
It's almost like a manly, very normal, social, human thing to do. It's a cultural thing. It's already been ingrained. Whereas weed is still drogas. So I have like a list of things that it's like, oh, shit's different. Even though I consider myself Mexican, I consider my roots to be very Mexican. I consider my identity to be very Mexican. Over there, I'll give you a better example.
I'll
give you a better example.
Where you were going with that?
No, like I guess to wrap that thought, I'm just gonna illustrate it. So even though my identity is Mexican, it's like over there, it's like, oh, no. This is Mexico, and culturally, we're worlds apart in many good ways because their family values are great. I feel like people enjoy life; they live life. So let me tell you about the Hondurans in Mexico. All right. So I even cracked I didn't try to like do it as a joke because I knew it wasn't developed. But what I noticed is over here, we're constantly reminded of how there's discrimination, there's maybe some kind of racism, or there's nationalism, there's this fear of who moved my cheese. There's like, hey, who's going to take my job? These invaders, right? And I'm like, damn, I'm going to Mexico where everyone's Mexican, and this is a country that's free of certain discriminations, even though indigenous people, and if you're very dark and native, you're going to have less, traditionally less say and less respect than someone that's more fair skinned. With that put aside, I'm thinking Mexico, everyone's Mexican, and I'm not going to see all this anti-immigrant ideology. Boy, if you see how they treat Central Americans down there, oh, y'all worse.
Not in the sense because they're taking their jobs. It's
because it's like they're draining. I don't know if they have.
It's because they're not. They don't try to get a job.
Well, they're begging,
and they're begging, and they're like trying to take advantage of their social services, basically.
So the narrative now is
how ironic, huh?
Here's the
totally.
Narrative. So the narrative basically over there is they don't. I literally heard this verbatim. The Hondurans have told us themselves, los mexicanos son pendejos porque nos dan dinero. Like, y'all are idiots because y'all help us. And we've learned that the American dream is not the U.S. The American dream is, on our way to the U.S., stay in Mexico because these motherfuckers are going to take care of you. And that's like the narrative. So people just look at them like invaders, get out, you're not welcome.
Heard that.
Well,
and it's a bit. It's going to be a bit, and it's going to be a bit because why? The irony.
Yeah.
Because from over here we think, oh no, look at all these alt-right people going to quote this part, right? Like, see, they treat the immigrants worse than we do. I don't know what their deportation numbers are. I don't know if they're putting people in those camps and those cages with the aluminum foil blankets and all that. I don't know all that, but I do know that. It's just interesting how in the matter of 48 hours, so many things jumped out at me. Just in a conversation with my cousin, like, oh, yeah, I can tell you're kind of mandilon.
Yeah.
And then we told esta Luisa, we're like, Luisa, yeah, man, people think I'm mandilon over there. She's like, well, some of the things you do would be considered mandilon. Like, I'm over here washing the dish as I'm saying this. She's like, hey, traditionally, a man isn't going to change a diaper. They're not gonna help, they're not gonna pitch out. And she's like, I wish I had help when I was pregnant.
She's like, I kind of envy you for like y'all literally are a team. Like if one's doing something, the other one takes care of the other thing, so it's not before it starts sounding like Chingo does everything at home and I'm sitting around being lazy. That's not what it is. It's literally, it's like
it's a team effort.
Team effort.
I drop, if anything, I'm just dropping the ball and she's over here behind me picking up the ball.
100% team effort. But what I'm saying is, and it was funny because I get super defensive immediately when anyone like says anything negative about him or has any like criticism, even if it's constructive criticism. After whoever gives a constructive criticism, I'm always like, Well, that's not necessarily the case, Pete. Okay, so don't listen to what they say. You know what I'm saying? So I'm always like,
Marisol es brava.
like that's not true. You know, that's great. I bet you they wouldn't get on stage. You know, that's like immediately my like
they don't understand. They're too busy trying to correct your Spanish.
Yeah,
for sure.
But they don't understand. Stand up is new over there, and it's blowing up.
But it was his family, and I was just like sitting there like, if this girl,
and I was like, it's okay. The truth hurts, you know. I mean, not the mandilon stuff.
Does not, and I said, no, it's mandilon.
What's a skewed truth?
Well, this is how I look at it. The way I look at things is this: is like from there, you have to remember they have their cultural perspective. The way people become programmed, right? We're all programmed based on our experiences and how we were brought up. Like for instance, over there, they're taught. And to some extent over here, you honor the flag, you salute the flag, even if nobody's watching. That's all part of the programming. It's like the only way this democracy and this society and this country is going to work is if everybody's on the same page. And that nationalism stuff is dangerous because the Amazon burning, they say that I know it's off subject, the president down there.
It's all orchestrated.
The president in Brazil, he's using a lot of the same ideology that we hear over here. He says, nobody told the UK not to chop down their trees when they built highways and built resorts and hotels, and they got wealthy. And, you know, Brazil was once colonized by Europe. So Europe, you got a lot of nerve, or anybody else in the country. Y'all want to talk about Brazil and the G7? We don't have a seat at the table. We're not even a member of the G7. And we're trying to get wealthy. People need jobs. The jobs are, we need to cut down these trees to make room for mining, cattle raising, and what is it? Lumber. What's the word? It's not lumbering. Anyway, it's like
wood mills.
Yeah,
milling.
so it's mining, ranching. That's what they're doing with, and the slash and burn thing. It's a thing they do every year, except this year, because he eased up on the ecological protection laws. He basically said, hey, you're in charge of the cattling and the ranch industry, right? Yes, I am. Cool. How about you're in charge of this, what we do with the rainforest thing? So they gave the cattle raising people the keys to the kingdom. So the people who have say over can we can we chop down more trees? Can we continue to burn and all that? They're the ones who have the say. So anyway, long story short, the thing with the fires, it's double. The burning this year was like double, 80% more than last year, and it just kind of got out of control to where it wasn't really able to sustain itself or whatever. But that's the nationalism stuff.
Well, back to
Mexico.
Back to Mexico, yeah. Wasn't it? It's ironic that generations from now, like starting, I would say with us, relationships and marriages will be dramatically different because we don't follow that type of household ideology.
My dad, growing up, I mean, he was probably as macho as he's from Mexican,
he grew up Mexican.
But my dad helped out at home. Like my mom, before having her own hair salon, she worked at a barbershop in the mall, so she had mall hours. So my dad, when he got home from work, he cooked dinner. We ate dinner together. He had dinner ready for my mom when she got home from work, and it was normal. Like, it was not like, oh, my dad is not going to do the dishes or not going to cook.
He wasn't macho.
Yeah, like, it wasn't like that, to where, I don't know, my dad always helped. So Pete helping out at home is not like
super foreign.
Super foreign to me, because my dad, and that's the kind of example I want for the girls
for
too.
Sure. I just think it's way more common now than it was 20
probably,
years ago.
yeah. And I just want them to know that your other half is supposed to be your team. Y'all are a team, and it only works if both you guys, do it together.
Here's another off-topic example of women or gender roles. And they say Ebola spread more because the women were expected to bury the dead, care for the sick, and then the kids, the orphans, were left to take care of each other. So it just exacerbated, like made everything worse due to gender roles in their culture and their society. The women were expected to do everything. They're having to take care of the sick, bury the dead, and then now the kids are having to watch each other, and the shit got worse. But so long story short, It was a cool trip.
Long story short, great trip.
Yeah, no, it really was because, you know, ain't nobody gonna, like, you're dumb if you think you could just go to another country, do 2 shows, and they're just all gonna, you know, you just, oh, you're the shit. No,
delusional, bro.
Yeah, we're planting seeds, right? We're peeping the scene. We made some great connections. It was a great experience. We met some funny fucking comics. Gautelier from out there. I think he's 5 years in the game. I wouldn't doubt it if a few years from now, Comedy Central or somebody, if they see him, just a couple years down the road, they might be like, hey, man, as long as you take this joke out and this joke out and then maybe add some stuff about this, I don't doubt they'll give him a little, like, Comedy Central or a Netflix thing where he's, like, featured amongst other comics. You have some up and coming cats. Quique Miranda, he's from Torreon. Well, Gomez. They was a running joke. No, soy de Gomez, quién sabe qué. But that's over there by Torreon. He's very funny, likable, just off stage even.
Toby.
Yeah, Toby. He's only been doing it, I think, like a year, and he's very funny, very likable. He's from Saltillo. He killed it. He
did.
Bro, his little act outs, his characters, the little voices and stuff. And then Chava Chiles, he does this like crowd participation thing, where it's like a tool. Where it reminds me. This is what he does. He asks for some chiles from the wait staff or whatever. He's like, all right. This is gonna be a crowd participation. If y'all don't laugh at a joke, I'm gonna eat a chile every time. So even if a joke didn't bomb, he would just very quietly, awkwardly start eating a chile, and then everyone gets it, and they're all like, it's because we didn't laugh, and then he gets the laugh. And he's barely starting too.
He's about a year and a half in.
Yeah, and he lived in the U.S. for like 6 months, and then he goes for work. So.
He also lived in the U.S. for high school, right?
Yeah, that was 6 months.
Oh, so he didn't do all of high school?
I think he did like half a semester or senior year or something. But, and then he lived in Germany for a while, so he has a very global type of perspective.
His parents are also, from what we gathered, we only met his father, who was helping around while we were out there transporting us and so forth. And it looks like he has very supportive parents who encourage the exposure of different cultures and learning another language, and it's very important to them.
Yeah,
so
they made sure he was a foreign exchange student.
Yeah.
So he studied American stand-up. Like, they're just consuming it. They're just, they're immersed in it because YouTube, and they can sit there and be like, no way, Bill Hicks. You know,
so I was going to ask you. So, what really? When you say it's booming, what set off the boom?
YouTube. So what happens is, traditionally in Mexico, you've had humorists, you've had like not stand-up comics, but you've had like comics and comedians and people who do like chistes or
would comedic actors be under that?
Just really everything except for American style stand-up, which is something that was born on it's an American born art form, like jazz and hip-hop and stuff like that. So they've had, the closest thing they've had to a stand-up is, ¿cómo se llama el señor? Adan Rodal, fuck, I don't know, but he's like a monologuist.
Yeah.
Monologue, I forget the fucking word, but it's very similar to stand-up, but it's more like Tonight Show.
Right.
If you see who he is, if you see his face, you'll know. Oh, yeah, because my parents used to watch him, so you'll be like, I know who that is.
Yeah, I'll Google it after this, but that's like the closest thing to American style stand-up. So now these guys are having to wrap their brain around like the structure, which they got. They understand, irony and sarcasm and joke structure and all that. But they're doing their homework on like, no, el Chris Rock, or like things are subtitled, things with subtitles, and or a lot of them speak some Spanish. I mean, some English. I think Chava's English is probably the best out of everybody.
All of them.
And so he can actually probably kind of like watch English stand up and get every other joke. He says that sometimes like black accents or like things that are just, he's like Jim Gaffigan. He's like, he speaks very textbook American. He's like, I can get everything you're saying. He's like, the guys from Compton. He's like, it's like Chris Rock, some things.
But
But
lost in translation kind of thing.
yeah, but all in all, man, it was eye-opening. It was fun. We can't wait to go back con tiempo, like more time, explore, maybe take the girls so they could be immersed in Mexican culture, which is beautiful. The scenery, the mountains, the weather, the food. I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that the sarape was created in Saltillo. The rebozo, which Marisol uses to carry the baby, that was created in San Luis Potosí. And then, breaking news. Put your seatbelt on. According to my cousin, I'm part Korean. All I jam is K-pop from now on.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
we're gonna do some reaction videos. To
It
K-pop.
it explains a lot. I don't know. Penny's eyes are kind of Asian. I don't know.
But my
You could be Joe Coy's
family,
cousin.
my family also is the same
Very.
way. I mean,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
My
that's
eyes
funny.
are very.
And of course,
Asian.
there's a mix, right? Because my mom, she could maybe sometimes damn near pass for like white, maybe. She's pretty light skinned.
She's pretty light skinned.
Until she talks, and it's like, nah, she's Mexican. But according to my cousin, she's like, yeah, you didn't know, like our great grandparents or something came from Korea and they worked in the U.S. and then from U.S. they went to Matehuala, San Luis Potosí, and then they met up, and so yeah,
Got
so
a history lesson.
yeah, so one day I'm gonna hook up with like James Cameron or some big director, and we're gonna make a whole movie out of that love story of from Korea to the U.S. to Matehuala, San Luis Potosí comes a story of two people united by work.
Crazy Rich Asians meets Selena.
Yeah. We're not Korean enough for Korea.
You know what's funny is that I've told people for a while. It's like it's at some point in your stand up you need to touch on. You're not Mexican enough for Mexicans, and you're not American enough.
That would
for
hit everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I've told him before. I'm like, you really? I think it was when you and Javi were writing, like the first little draft of the series and stuff, and I had told you, I was like, somewhere in there it needs to be,
That's funny.
you know,
That's a good
like
point.
addressed, you know.
Well, I dare say that I got some material ideas while I was there.
Yeah.
And I heard Roy Woods on Joe Rogan, and he was saying that, I think he was quoting Dave Chappelle, that he said, writers, pay attention to those times in your life or those moments where the material just kind of comes to you and it just works itself out. What were you doing? What was your system? What was going on in your life? And pay attention to that, because that's how your machine, that's how your wheelhouse works, or your you know what I mean? So it's almost like I'm making a mental note right now of I was exploring a new culture, a new place, and it to quote Jim Gaffigan, it showed me not only the absurdity of their culture, but it showed me the absurdity of our culture. You know what I'm saying? And then I want to think back to those other bursts of material, like the birth experience.
Although, you know what's crazy is, so we talked with the guys about it. The whole approach of the stand-up, it's honestly, it made me think of sign language, right? Because you don't translate, like you don't
Literal.
translate in sign language, you interpret, right? Which there's a difference. Vocabulary wise, those two words mean totally different things, right? So in the stand-up, you're not going to translate it from from English to Spanish. You're going to interpret the material from English to Spanish, because the birthing story would have hit had he told the story interpreted versus translated.
Yeah, because
Does that make sense?
For sure. And that's why you guys listen. Nuggets like that of knowledge.
and yeah, right. Everyone's like, we don't do stand up. Change this. Go back to Brazil and the rainforest. So, what I was gonna say, I kind of forgot.
It would have hit if it was.
Okay, yeah, two things. So, honestly, I felt slightly unprepared, only because we were going from, again, not to make excuses, from like focusing on the Houston shows, focusing on the Dallas shows, going to do the Combate thing, to, all right, now we're in Mexico, now we're cramming. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we have a big photo shoot this weekend, and it's thankfully we have a team, and there's a ton of assistance in that department. But even then, it's things that need to be approved and whatnot. So it's like I didn't make the time to do the interpretation versus the so I was literally like, quickest thing is, what can you translate? What can you literally say, hey, you know the joke about XYZ? How can I tell it and explain it in Spanish? Okay, these are the words, vocabulary, right? Versus interpreting, which is going to be like, hey, birth story. From a cultural perspective, let's go down memory lane. Tell me again, you know, with now looking at it through a new lens, right? It's like, tell me again, how did it go down? Like, describe, again, what the sights, the sounds, paint the picture for me. Because not to give away the joke, but there's a part where it's like, you know, if my sister-in-law knew that she was giving birth, it's like, man, we'd have 33 Mexicans in the backyard barbecuing, and somebody's kids would have jumped in the birth pool, and who the hell hired a DJ? In Mexico, they're like, okay, so
what's the problem?
Where's the joke at?
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Here it's teased
kids.
about, you know, that Hispanics or Mexicans travel in packs, and you know there's a shitload of us, and
get cakes for a 1-year-old's party.
Exactly.
Pachanguero.
So that's like the.
I guess to describe it, it'd be like the absurdity. It's almost like a sketch. It's like, oh my God, I can picture someone's badass kids jumping in the birth pool. That's totally unacceptable. I can see how that's funny. Like, she just finished saying, I don't want anybody at my birth. And can you imagine all all these people in your backyard, like leaving the door open, the smoke's coming in. They're like, hey man, meat's ready. And then why is there a DJ doing shout outs? And over there I'm like, you know, un saludito para la mamacita que ya está para aliviarse. Sa. Ya tú sa. Mesa. And they're just like, yeah, okay. So what's...
That happened last week. What's the problem?
Why wouldn't you want that?
So on the way to the airport, we were kind of talking about the show and, you know, so forth. And Chava goes, it is a little like hippie, even here in Mexico, for someone to have their baby at home.
Which is ironic because parteras and home births have been, you know, I guess now it's looked at as like de rancho, but I mean, it has its history.
My grandma had a lot of her kids at home. You know, not at her house, but you'd go to the midwife's house and have your baby.
Dalila and Pat
were both
born with midwives.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And it's what she's saying about that modernization. It says a lot about the propaganda that was put in place. Like Marisol makes a good point when she says, sick people go to hospitals. I don't necessarily need to give birth where there's a bunch of sick people.
That's a good continuation of a premise after this is all, like, the current material's done. Because I don't know if you've said before that, like, maybe that's why you were a sickly kid.
Why was I a sick? Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I said it because I'm a pre-cum baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but like that, and then just like the tonsil thing and the allergies, like it would just be maybe you could find a way to frame it to where they weren't, you know, they don't have
born in a hospital now. Yeah, maybe. But
I see where your idea is going. Yeah.
But what comes to my mind when I see
Penny's gonna be his little soldier.
Bruh, she's
man.
already
Okay,
yo,
pin that right now. I'm gonna tell you something that happened today.
Pick it up already. I laughed so hard this morning.
Go ahead, and then I'll come back.
We go. I take her, you know, to go play this morning. We went to go play this morning, and these kids are not letting her play. Right, these little boys. They're like so mean, man. I'm like, I don't know. Penny is a year old, so sometimes I try to like stay back and just kind of like let her be a kid and not be all like
helicopter.
Yeah, like hey, don't touch my child type of thing, right? But this little boy was just like beating up on a bunch of people. Remember, he was like making that little girl cry and the mom. And here's the thing. Yeah. I try not to be judgy, right, about moms because being a mom is a hard job, right?
But these hoes be checking email.
But if your baby is sitting your baby is getting beat up and you're gonna stay on the phone and just watch the whole time.
I think they look at us as helicopter parents.
1,000%.
Because we're, like she said, Penny's about a little bit over a year. I mean, she walks fairly well. She'll fall from time to time. They do have like a little zip line, and there are some moving parts like the trampoline. You know, there's like little springs and things on the edge and little gaps where you don't want their foot to get stuck.
Where Pete fell today.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he didn't fall. He hurt himself getting out of the
trampoline.
trampoline.
Oh, man.
I know you're asking why is there a 40-year-old in the trampoline.
Looking after my 1-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we try not to be overprotective. Like, no, Penny, no. We're not like that. We're just kind of like a few feet away, just kind of like, all right, baby, you want to play with this? Okay, good. Yeah, get it. And these other moms, man, they just housewives, like yoga pants, they just looking at their phone, emails, chit-chatting.
Like, it's their alone time, and I totally
like,
get it.
the fuck out of my... literally, one kid was like, Mom, can you help me with this now? He wanted to, like, climb up a thing. No, honey, I already helped you a lot with the other thing.
Because she wanted to sit and keep talking
She
with
wanted
the
to get
lady.
back on her fucking phone.
Yeah.
Just because she, like, helped him go up this, like, rope ladder thing where they, like, hit a little button or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, no, I already helped you.
I guess for us, and you know, this is why I don't like to be judgy about stay-at-home moms, because they need that alone time. You know what I'm saying? And so they probably go there so that their kids can play, so that they can have a little bit of, like, don't bother me time. I brought you to a playground. Go, play. We totally get it, but I think because we don't have the luxury of always having these play dates with her where we go and get to play with her because we're so busy all the time and we're running around half the time. Like, it's, you know.
It doesn't make you a bad parent, you know, just because you want to be like, you just go play, you know,
Yeah.
just do your own
No,
thing.
not at all. That's what I'm saying.
I get it if you're at a, like, I get it. We're here, go play. I get that. But if the kid is like, hey, can you help me up this thing? Nah, I'm good. I'm good.
that is pretty bad, though. I would have been like,
so
help her,
funny.
right?
It's
I would have
like,
been like, all right, come
I'll
on.
help you once or twice.
It's
By
like-
the third time, I'm like, Brooklyn, you got it, man.
Yeah.
It's
Or
like-
Weston, you got it, man.
Jeez.
But anyway, speaking of like a little soldier, so that little boy wasn't letting Penny play.
Tell me she took a swing.
Well, she did that the other time we were there.
Yes.
But let me tell you how she did it. So the little girl was being a little biatch to her, you know? And I was just like, you little witch, you know? And so Penny was like trying to play, and the little girl didn't want her to play there and didn't want her to touch anything because she was on the register.
She's borderline getting bullied.
Yeah, so she was getting bullied. So kind of Penny just walks off, and she goes to find something to play. Well, then she sees that the little girl isn't paying attention, right? Penny comes over there and just socks her. Like, hey, bitch, I didn't forget what you were doing to me.
Remember 5 minutes ago?
Remember 5 minutes ago? And I was like,
What's
Penny!
happening?
And then she was like, she just looks at me like, what? Like,
She had it coming.
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I like texted him. I was like, do you know
Payback.
what she just did? Like,
Love
out
it.
of nowhere, it was like she turned around.
Payback.
They
I
have
knew you
these-
little bitches from way back.
They have this like little like shelf of like little boxes where they keep like the food and the little fake
play
foods and all that, the
toys.
play toys. So Penny was distracted over there playing. Then she kind of turned around and saw that the little girl wasn't kind of like paying attention. Penny went over there and just,
Sass.
and I was just like, oh my
Stiff
God.
arm.
And I got her and I was like, no, you know, and I like let her know that it's not okay. Well, today the same thing was happening. The little boy was not letting her play. And so now she's like this, bah, 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 with her little
Oh,
finger.
yeah. That's her favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Like,
And then she does her finger. Cause I guess because we tell her no, no, you know. So now she does her little no. And so she's telling that little boy like, I don't know what she's telling him, but basically it's like, I'm finna
telling
play
him off.
here if I want to play.
Like yesterday, we went to Sun and Ski to get Mickey a bike because she outgrew her bike. And Penny's just wanting to run around that whole freaking store, won't sit still. She like trips on there was a dip in the ground for some reason. And she went back to it and was like,
To the dip in the ground?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then today, this morning, we all woke up to get Mickey ready for school, breakfast, lunch pack. We're getting ready to head out. And Penny wakes up in her crib or in the bed?
No, she's in
Crib.
bed.
Bed?
In the crib, I'm sorry.
In the crib. And it was dark in there. Lights were off. And we heard her. Marisol goes in there. And she's like, almost like, who the hell left these lights on?
Yeah.
It's funny. We're
It's
talking
hilarious.
about kids. One of my best friends from high school just had her baby right just now.
Oh, wow. Come on.
Yeah. Crazy, man. All my friends are getting old having kids. It's nuts.
Yeah.
What do you consider old, brother?
Yeah, right?
Me,
Uh,
man.
uh,
30, you know?
Yeah, when do you turn 30?
October 18th. 10 days
Yeah.
after Marisol.
That's young.
No, I know.
Yeah, that's young.
I
That's
just because
super
we
young.
feel so young, but all of a sudden, like, you breaking into your 30s, you having kids, all that kind of stuff. It just seems like what you do when you
Is
get a little...
Dawn 30 also?
She's 35.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Now I look at everything from a cultural perspective. So, for instance, you consider 30 old because, what'd you say? Because people start having kids and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? In Mexico, it's
That's-
like, oh, you should have been had kids.
Right.
You should have been married.
Right. I remember.
It was like, you're just now having a kid? Even with my babysitter.
I remember.
She's like,
Ya te pasó el
you
voz.
just...
El
you
tren y
just-
el avión,
yeah.
todo.
I was like, yeah. Well, I mean, my mom, when she was 37, I was 17. So I was about to graduate high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's like somebody younger than me.
yeah. So basically,
Graduated
you
high
know,
school.
And I think we all look at it maybe from like a career standpoint. Everyone's doing more in careers now
For
than they
sure.
were before. So then it's like, yeah, that's young, 27, 26 to be having your kid or whatever. Still, that's considered young.
I couldn't imagine I've had my child any younger than 37, to be honest with you. I mean, at
and
36.
I totally agree with you. I think that's.
I don't know that
for sure.
I don't know what it would have been like for me at 30. I don't know that I was mature. Financially, I was fine. I wasn't like financially unstable. But
Just as a developed human, like, are you ready to have that?
at 30, I would have been a garbage mom, I feel. Just because I was still party mode at 30.
More Pac, less Barbie.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's funny.
I was still party mode at 30. I was like, just.
Yeah, I'm not party mode at all.
Me either. I
At
was when we
all.
were hanging out with his cousins.
I was like, oh.
my belly just felt like it was like, because how do
I say
we
good
rarely
night?
drink,
And
right?
sure enough, she was like, "Oh, you finna bitch out?" Like in Spanish, and I'm like, we've had nothing but early flights. Tomorrow's another one, and we got to go through immigration, customs, and all that, and not to mention that the airport is in Monterrey. We're in Saltillo.
How
Which
far
was
is
in
that?
about an hour 30.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And
That's a
in the
mission.
morning, it was a mission because the ride was a couple minutes late, and they just started making us nervous. Like, fuck, man, we trying to get home to these kids.
What happens is we're so used to, I have everything organized. So, for example, I will order, you know how you can order your Uber to be there at a certain time,
Mhm.
so you'll request it. So the night before, whenever we're, wherever city we're in, I already have the Uber ready. So the alarm is set. I know the Uber's been ordered. We're ready to go. We usually 99% of the time never depend on anyone to take us to and from anywhere.
Speaking of shows and cities, we have Portland and Raleigh, North Carolina coming up. ChingoBling.com. Don't get
DC.
sold out.
You haven't been to DC in a minute, Boo, and you're about to go
Yeah.
back. So that's pretty cool. I
Washington,
think
DC.
it's about time. You know,
Oh yeah, the
so to be
19th of October, the day
Yeah.
after my
The
birthday.
DC Improv, where
Mhm.
Schultz filmed his crowd work show.
Special.
Are you sure it's the 19th?
I'm pretty sure it's the 19th.
I thought it was close to my birthday. I think it's
check
the
it
9th,
right
isn't
meow.
it? Or something like that. Because I even think I said we're spending. I think we're going.
Oh
to
yeah, you're right. It's the 9th. 19th is Albuquerque, which
Yeah.
tickets are
See?
online.
Hey, that's a good way to bring in
Hey.
ABQ. Green
ABQ.
chili on deck.
In Tacoma, right between that on the 17th.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Man,
Breaking Bad.
how crazy this shit's almost up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, time flew. Hell of
October.
a tour.
You know how you said a little bit ago, you were like, people are probably like, who gives a F about stand up? Like, go back to. It's funny, though. It's people probably are curious about, I feel, because
Oh yeah.
no one. If you just go to enjoy comedy, you enjoy the comedy. You enjoy the whatever they're talking about, the their observation, etc. But you don't ever really you like pay attention or care to know about the structure of how comedy is written to
Mhm.
get to where they are. So to some people, they probably have no idea that it takes writing time, that you've got to make time for writing, that you know what I'm saying. You meet up with your comedy, your comic circle, and you guys talk about ideas. Y'all toss around ideas. So I think it's still pretty cool that you kind of put it out there for your fans
Yeah,
to know
it's like a
how,
behind the scenes.
behind the scenes
It's
of
like-
what goes on.
It's like if you enjoy magic shows and stuff, you try not to, the magician doesn't want to give up all his tricks, because then it's like, fuck, dude, I'm not going to, that was a cool card trick
Yeah.
when I didn't know how it came about.
There's no more suspension of disbelief kind of thing.
Yeah, so.
I have that problem now because
Oh, yeah.
when I go to a show now, I don't enjoy stand up the way I used to. For me, it's now like I know where you're going. I like already can kind of predict where they're going to go with it because
I kind of like it more for that now, just because I'm a comedy nerd and a music nerd. So just like when I'll go watch somebody play, I'll just look at what they're doing and like, oh, the wrist and the this and the that or whatever. And with comedy, it's like, oh, I see it building up, and then boom, the big crescendo kind of thing.
For sure. So I don't know that I enjoy it that much because I'd like to just sit there and enjoy and be able to laugh versus I'm sitting there being like, oh, you know how he could have said this or he could have done this. You know what would have been a good tag
that extra
for that?
word in there. There's some fat on that joke.
What's going to be cool is when the podcast level of listeners get to the point of like your online following now, like the places aren't going to be big enough to hold all these people because everybody that loves the behind the scenes and listening to the podcast is going to be just as equal to, if not greater than, the people that are coming out to shows now. So you're going to have like real diehard podcast listeners that are hearing you form this stuff and then watching you do it.
Speaking of that, I really feel we need to do some kind of poll, not toll, on the What Did He Said podcast account. And I really would like to like, or maybe you can help with this because you do all the analytics part is like, where should we do the 100th episode?
So I had an idea for that. Another one of these little high thoughts was, you know, we do.
Boy, you don't be getting high.
You don't know about that, son. No, at least not with me. We do Hanging with the Blings. That's like its own show. It's a What Did You Say podcast, but it's Hanging with the Blings. And then we do the interviews when cool people come through and whatever.
Sure.
And the 100th episode could be one of those like Hanging with the Blings episodes where instead of worrying about setting up a stage and a guest and a conversation and all that theatrics, it's just almost like a dinner with the Blings. It's a dinner and a show. It's a Q&A style podcast that we record. People come through, you get to ask questions, and it's basically like a panel almost, where it's just you two, people asking questions, and you get to ping pong off each other, and then the next question. And it makes it a lot more manageable.
Yeah, I love that. It makes a ton of sense.
And then I guess we can decide where based on where most of our listeners are from, right?
Yeah.
Wait. So you're trying to go to some whole other city?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I think that'd be cool.
Is this a driving situation or flying situation?
I guess it's going to depend on...
Why don't we do like Fort Worth or something?
I mean, if it's like, it's definitely going to be Florida, California, and Texas are like the biggest three, I would say, top three.
Florida, California, and Texas.
You're talking about podcast listeners?
Just like I would say like overall fan base.
Well, just from
Florida.
Yes, I mean from.
Then why doesn't it translate to
yes, it does.
ticket sales? All the,
I think it kind of does.
We had to cancel.
What did we cancel
one time
in Florida?
We didn't go back to Orlando.
That's not a cancel.
Well, we didn't book it again because the ticket sales
because
there.
we were unsatisfied with like, is it worth it?
You got to do it this year, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not doing it next year.
But there's also, don't forget about Homestead, Naples. You know what I'm saying?
We are going to Naples next year. That's already booked.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always, like when people ask me, like, hey, so what are your markets? I always make sure to, after Texas and California, to make sure I mention the Midwest, like Chicago, for example, and Florida. Believe it or not, Florida.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, because think about it. Florida, don't get me wrong, Phoenix, like the Southwest, like Colorado, I mean, even the Northwest is like pretty good. But after Texas and Cali, Florida has to be a contender because it's not necessarily going to be Atlanta or Alabama or DC. You know, we haven't hit like Philly, and there's a whole bunch of, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But we finna go international.
Full circle.
We are.
Kind of off subject, but we were talking about the rainforest earlier and the disaster of all that. We just finished watching Chernobyl on HBO.
Oh man, I started it. I need
so good,
man.
So good. It's only a 5-part miniseries.
Really?
5-part.
Yeah, 5 1-hour episodes about the whole Chernobyl disaster.
From what I've heard and what I recall, it was a situation. I need to watch it, and I don't want to spoil stuff. But from what I recall, it was a situation where like people were trying to alert, like, hey man, this thing's gonna melt down. We're gonna have a nuclear meltdown if we don't do something. And I guess the people in charge were like, well, we don't want to look dumb, like we don't know what we're doing, so we're just gonna keep plowing forward. You know when the Challenger exploded, you might be too young for this shit.
I don't remember
the ship,
that.
the spaceship. That was in a management book in college as an example of groupthink. So groupthink is where, let's say we're planning a 100th episode podcast, right? And Rob suggests his, and I'm too embarrassed to raise my hand and be like, but what about XYZ? And then y'all look at me like, bitch, we just said we're going to do it like this.
Yeah.
And when it ends up being, that's what happened to Challenger. Like, it was a tragedy. It was a travesty and a tragedy mixed. It was a disaster. Like, people died, and they said that during the flights, the scheduled flight for the Challenger, that some of the engineers were like, hey man, we should probably push back this flight. They're like, no. The American public, it's going to be televised.
Oh, shit,
it's scheduled. No. We're not going to look like we don't know what we're doing. We got to push back a launch. Figure it out. They're like, based on some of these calculations, man, I think we might run into some issues. Hey, and then you get groupthink, and it's like, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to shut up. And then people just start to buy into this, like, well, hey, such and such.
That's exactly what happened. Like, between the KGB and the Soviet, like, the entire government, they didn't want to look like fools to America. You just have to watch it. I mean, we learned about it growing up, but when you actually, like, they have all the accounts and some raw footage from, like, the actual, meltdown and all that kind of shit, and then the recovery process of all that. It's just crazy what could have happened if it didn't get fixed.
Yo, have you seen Vice, the movie Vice?
No.
Yeah, you probably should.
On the plane, on one of these flights, I didn't even have headphones and shit. I just watched
annoying.
the screen. Yeah, I just watched the screen. I was just trying to kill time. And I'm watching the screen. I'm remembering some of the stuff that went down with Dick Cheney, who was vice president under George W. Bush, who really was running shit behind the scenes. Some of the stuff that popped out in the movie that stood out was like basically how they were like, hey, Osama bin Laden and them did this 9/11 thing, so we got to go invade Iraq. And they're like, whoa. Osama and them, they over there in Afghanistan. Yeah, but we got to go to Iraq. And it's like, well, how are we going to justify that? And Tyler Perry's character, who's in it, along with Steve Carell and all these people, Christian Bale and all them, Tyler Perry's character, he has to go, like, present this argument. So this is what they did. There was this dude who I guess had spent time in Iraq, or he was, like, kind of Iraqi, and somehow, some way, he had a brief interaction with bin Laden in Afghanistan. And they were like, oh, that's it. This guy who somehow, this is going to connect the dots. So they were able to launch this huge war, take up all the oil. Halliburton, Dick Cheney was a guy that had stock and all that. Halliburton, their
no bid contracts.
Their stock went up like 800%. So many, like 600,000 innocent civilian Iraqis died. Like a whole bunch of shit. All based on, and not to mention, millions of emails went missing. Millions of emails went missing. That probably would have proved, like, hey man, we're just gonna go in here and be like, hey Exxon, which pipeline you want, Mobil, Chevron? We're gonna go up in there. We're gonna start this war. We're gonna get this money, and fuck it, But
Rogan had
I recommend it.
Dan Crenshaw on. Have you listened to it yet?
Just like 5 minutes of it.
It's really good. I wasn't a big fan. I didn't really know much about him other than
he was a Navy SEAL and he had the eye patch.
Yeah. He's from Texas. He's a congressman out of Texas, and he has some pretty good points for being a pretty conservative guy.
I think his commercial has something to do with the patch too on his eye.
Oh yeah,
his little commercial. I can't remember what it was, but
even right off the bat, it's like, well, you came to Prevalence after what's his name on SNL?
Pete Davidson.
Pete Davidson, yeah, called him
a joke.
What did he say it was?
He said he looked like a hitman in a porno movie.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, that is funny. And speaking of left and right and conservative and liberal and all that, I'm like straight up the middle,
right?
Because a lot of motherfuckers on the left be extreme left, extreme liberal. And Colin Quinn has a new special on Netflix, and it's produced by CNN. And he does it like in this town hall meeting type of vibe, like in the theater, but there's people up on stage. Dude, he's making excellent points. He's breaking shit down. He says there's 2 political parties, 14 genders, 2 political parties. He's basically saying like it's an outdated system.
Yeah.
And he's breaking it down like from the beginning. Breaking it down. He's like, in the 1940s, a whole movie plot was dude likes a girl, dude's trying to get a kiss. That's the whole plot. He's like, you know what a first date was back in the day? You're walking on a little sidewalk. You're going for a walk. That's your first date. Second date, you pushing on a swing for 20 minutes. And he's going on and on. He's like, now They're fucking sending dick pics and, you know, he's like this Tinder thing. He's like, even if you showed it to Caligula, the orgy Italian people, he's like, Caligula would be like, oh, wow, no, I like to have a good time. But goddamn, what the fuck is it? You just swiping everybody?
That's funny.
And he's breaking down politics. He's breaking down, like, America and all kinds. He said the liberals, no, first he said the conservatives, they don't want to support Hollywood. They don't go to the movies because they think it's all, like, agenda. He's like, they treat America like it's a football game, high school football. They're like, yeah, we're the best. Woo, we're the greatest. He's like, the liberals say, we're borderline. He's like, this country's borderline becoming like Nazi, and what did he say? It's like a patriarchy and something. So they're all paranoid that like everything's fucked up.
Yeah.
And he just makes some great points.
Funny.
I mean, pretty much it is fucked up.
But really, you know who I blame a lot of times, bro, when it comes to all this like left versus right shit?
El Donald Trump.
No, the media.
I know.
I mean, the media, because the media, it's like they want to have people upset. Just like Facebook,
Well, they're only going to take one portion of something and, you know,
they
blow it up. You
they
know,
edit
of course.
it. The New York Times got in big trouble. I don't know if you heard about this.
They got sued, didn't they?
They got a whistleblower, right? Somebody who worked in that editing room basically said, look, man, this is what they're doing. They said, for the longest time when it was all about Russian collusion and the Mueller report, it was all about framing every single story to fit that one narrative, like if it has to do with, you know, this Russia thing, right? They said now that went away, the Mueller report thing, and it just lost steam. Nobody gives a fuck no more. He says now it's racism. So now they're trying to frame every single thing, like if something goes down, first and foremost, how do we prove it's racism? Instead of, hey man, maybe in this case it just happened to be a white cop, it just happened to be a black dude, you know, it just like, hold on. Let's look at all the facts. They're like, no. How can we frame it to be racism? Why? It keeps everybody divided. It keeps the ratings good. They know that when you're upset, you're more likely to get involved. When you're angry, you're more engaged. Like the algorithm knows, like if there's a positive Facebook post, it's only gonna go so far.
Mm-hmm.
When it's some like shit that gets people riled up, you know.
Yeah, it keeps you on the platform longer.
Yeah, and everybody makes more money. So the media, y'all need to cool it with that bullshit. And I guess to my people, take everything with a grain of salt. Don't believe everything. Don't just jump to a conclusion because
do your own research.
Yeah.
Have your own opinion.
Look into it.
Yeah, look
pull
into
up,
it for sure.
Like what's the name? Look into it. It's like you know. I'm not telling everybody like make time to pull up the entire transcript of the little thing that they misquoted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying do all that, but don't fall for the okie doke. Consider that. Now, I will make a distinction real quick, right? Because this shit's important and dangerous, and I have a responsibility.
There you go.
So, what I just finished saying is that taking into consideration that some of these newspapers and things are businesses, and a lot of these news stations, it's about commercials and advertising. And just because they're like, is blah 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 racist, blah 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 racism back after the commercial, they're just asking a question. They're not even like showing any real tangible
evidence,
proof or any. They're just throwing shit around right back after the commercial. Now, the distinction I want to make is when there is corruption, when there is somebody like people in power, when somebody's borderline dictator, like bad shit like that, and when there is a good reporter asking important questions, that shit's important. So I guess I'm drawing a difference between like some network that's just, or a newspaper that's just talking shit for the sake of talking shit, versus Jorge Ramos, who's like interviewing, let's say, motherfucking Hugo Chavez or
I mean, that's where I get my
Maduro.
news. That's why I follow him on social
Dude,
media. That's where I get my news from.
How was that book?
Fire.
I just wanted to give you a heads up that you've got about.
I gotta leave.
Yeah,
Okay, we leaving. I gotta leave in 5. Okay, I highly recommend the Jorge Ramos book. I read it in Spanish. That was part of my preparation.
What?
Of course. And I have another.
Read or listened to it?
Read it. No. I have to immerse myself in Spanish. Like, read it. I'm journaling in what do I journal in now? Spanish. Read Chernobyl. We watching at home in Spanish. So I already told Marisol, hey, like I know we're going to bed because my baby got me the bedded I get a sleep study every night. I have an app that tells me how much tossing and turning, how much snoring, the temperature in the room, the humidity in the room, so on and so forth.
I'm gonna reach out to Chili. I keep Chili Tag.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting.
for sure.
Because we're all about that sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the Jorge Ramos book, I just ordered *Sapiens* in Spanish.
Well, you just got it in already.
I just got it in. I already started reading it in Spanish. So going back to Saltillo, Monterrey, muchísimas gracias. But the story is gonna be like, hey man, I know what Selena did. I know what Jan Rivera did. I know what Intocable. I know what Cumbia King. When it comes to comedy, I want to be mentioned right next to, like, you know, when you in Mexico, I want people to be like, okay, sí, del stand-up yo conozco a, you know, Franco Escamilla, conozco a Chingo Bling, conozco, and they're like, wait, isn't he American though? Sí, pero él hizo show aquí en el teatro y lo hace en español, está chido, güey, y nos entiende, y, like,
Why?
¿Cómo?
Way. If I heard that word one more time
From females.
this weekend,
It's
really
females.
Wow.
Güey. No, hombre, güey. El putazo anda bien pendeja, güey. Me puse bien pendeja. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, brother. So anyway, Jorge Ramos' book is really, really, really good. He breaks down all his... He interviewed Fidel Castro, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Spike Lee. All these things are in the book where, like, Fidel Castro's security, like, hit him to get him out the way because he was asking important questions. Hugo Chavez from fucking Venezuela, he got taken over by Nicolás Maduro, and he was there, bro. He's been to war, literally, as a reporter with both Bushes.
I remember. He was the only guy on TV when I was growing up.
Me too.
He
That's
was-
all I know. That's what I told him. I was like, this is the guy who always brought the legit news. Like,
And Real Talk looks exactly the same.
exactly.
Well, now we're white hair.
Him and Maria Antonieta Collins were
Yeah.
my...
He was at Univision before it was Univision. It had a different name.
Yep.
It was called something else. So people like him, like real reporters that ask important questions, and they're trying to get to the bottom of, like, hey, why were these 43 students allowed to be murdered by the fucking government? Or, like, why are these Mexican presidents running off with all the money? And he'll, like, straight up ask him in an interview, hey, so you have a government job, right? You were a governor and now you're a president. Yes. So you've been a public servant for how many years? X amount of years. How much do they pay for these positions? 100,000 whatever pesos per month. Okay, cool. Are you a millionaire? How is it possible that you're a multimillionaire? Do you have properties all over the world? And
You only get this much
like
money.
discovering things like wait a minute, there was a government contract that was approved for this construction company to build this thing for the country, like I forget what it was, like an autopista or some shit, right? And then all of a sudden it never gets built. All of a sudden y'all getting a house built. How's that work? So they're doing favors, they fucking over the Mexicans, bro. Like the so corrupt.
Autopista, is that a racetrack?
No, that's a freeway.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Like yeah. Anyway, that's
well,
my
yeah.
rant.
Well, to wrap it up on the writing part earlier, to go back to it, I got the 300 more prompts.
I saw that.
You know, and then along with it, I got a daily gratitude journal.
Yes.
So I hadn't written in like 4 or 5 years. Like
I need to go get... That's the one you bought from...
Half price book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should go get one.
And dude, just, you know, a lot of people don't like to write. I used to love writing, and then I got out of it or whatever. Once you just put the pen, and I took this from Joey Diaz before I saw that you had that book, and he told me, like, you should really get one of these. It transcends like what you experience when you put it on paper.
Well, that's why I used to like blogging.
Yeah.
Was because that was my way of writing.
You got to get back on that.
And
bro.
then I stopped because my website went down. So
Really?
it was like not a way for me to... But that was kind of like the way that I communicated to the ladies who followed me, or like...
my baby Ben had a following.
Yeah, for real.
But, you know, that's honestly how... And especially because a lot of the ladies that I knew also didn't have social media.
Mhm.
This was also the way that I connected with them still about health and fitness and recipes and all of that. That used to be on my old website.
So Joey Diaz references The Warrior Way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a book that pertains to journaling or something. I haven't read it. Tim Ferriss also mentions, I think it's called The Way of the Warrior or Warrior Way.
Yeah, I think I showed it to you too, right? Someone.
We should probably look into getting that one in Spanish. And long story short, the way Tim describes, Joey's gonna describe it a whole totally different fucking way.
Yeah.
You fucking write the shit down. You fucking it's a beautiful day to be alive. You put the date. It's a beautiful day to be alive. And then I just put whatever the fuck. Tim Ferriss describes it as, especially somebody like me, bro. I don't know if it's neurotic. I've never been diagnosed. Last night I had a hard time shutting off my brain. It was just like boom boom. I did smoke a little bit, that might have something to do with it, but it was just like thought, and my mind's fucking running around. But Tim Ferriss describes journaling as that's the way to trap the monkey mind. Like basically like you free the inner chatter that you just have going on by just putting it on the page, and whatever it is that's on your mind, whatever you're worried about, whatever concerns, whatever like to do, whatever dreams, aspirations, things you're grateful for, anything, you put it down on the page, and it should help alleviate some of that anxiety and
The one someone told me about was The Artist's Way.
The Artist's Way.
Huh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is also about journaling, because someone asked me.
Jotted my notes.
Well, someone asked me on Tip Tuesday, like, what do you do as far as like keeping track of your thoughts? And I'd say, well, I journal on morning pages, and so that's the app that I use to journal. And so she's like, oh my God. She goes, well, did you get that idea from The Artist's Way? And I said, no, I don't even know what that is. She's like, well, this book talks about
Nice. Okay.
that. So
I
The
wonder
Artist's Way.
Interesting. I wonder if that's like a version of the Warrior's Way. I'll look into that. But
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for tuning in. I gotta go pick up my 6th grader. Y'all be safe, man. What else?
And Portland.
Yeah,
Come out, Portland.
We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we love the feedback. If you see us out and about, be like, and if you listen, be like, hey man, I dig the podcast. What it do? We have Portland coming up, Raleigh, North Carolina, Washington D.C., San Antonio, Albuquerque. Hit up chingobling.com and Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah.
And I just saw they have a comedy club, another one I never heard of in Seattle, and we need to hit Seattle.
So tickets along with merch at chingobling.com. Remember to get 10% off using promo code WDHS.
What did he say?
Got a new shirt adding this week too. I'm gonna add that one.
Oh,
so
nice.
you know what I mean.
Excellent. Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, guys.